All right, then we'll get started. I'm sure more people will join as we get going here. But yeah, welcome to a town hall, guys. We got Aaron here and Kieran, co-founders of Illuvium. I just posted a tweet on Twitter the other day about doing this town hall, and I got instantly about like 30 questions or so. And with Andrew not being able to do showcase this week, he had a computer kind of grenade on him. I figured it'd be a good time to get some of your guys' questions answered. So if you have any questions you want to ask initially, you guys can post them over there and ask us anything, and I'm monitoring that chat. Otherwise, I'll get started with some questions that we have from Twitter. Unless you guys just want to give kind of a general update on anything, Aaron or Kieran, we can kind of jump into some of these questions. I figured we could start with some of the Illuvium Zero questions, since that's, the most, the latest production of
Yeah,
it
I
we
think
had.
that we'll get a pretty good update of things based on the questions that people are asking. We can wait to the end if there's anything else we need to
Okay.
update people on.
Okay. Well, so yeah, you guys are more than welcome to raise your hands or ask questions and ask us anything, but I'll go ahead and start with one of the ones from Twitter, which let's start with this one. What ideas is the team contemplating for mega cities, and more information about if we have any more plans regarding mega cities?
Uh, so, so because that's an expansion, we're still mostly focused on getting all of the features that we need for the open beta out first. But in the background, we've been doing a little bit of work on what it would mean from the perspective of balance, what it would mean with regards to future expansions and the types of things that people will need to build. So the general idea is that with a megacity, not only will you get the benefits of the different landmarks and sites that you've got on your land, and all of those things add together to make it better than say 4 times or 9 times what it would be if you had just a single plot. So there is some benefits from the perspective of efficiency, but then also we're going to have some structures that are very big, and there's a limit to how big a structure can be on a single plot. But if your plot gets to be say 4x or 9x, then we will have a few options available to us to allow you to build structures that are quite huge, and the bigger your city, the better the things you'll be able to build. And because they will be only be able to be built by people that have those megacities, you'll be competing to build those types of things with far fewer people. So the main idea is around balance. The exact items, there's a few that we have in mind, but we don't want to mention them just yet because it really hinges on other expansions that we haven't had approved yet. So basically the idea would be we'll put out an IIP that says, hey, we would like to work on X game, and in this game there would be Y assets, and that asset would come from Illuvium Zero. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Makes sense to me.
And there's one thing beyond that which Kieran and I are currently arguing about, which is a little bit wild, which would impact megacities. we have an internal name for it, which is a bit ridiculous, but I can't go into that because at this stage, I've been told that the idea is complete garbage. But I just got to fight to get my vision out there.
Not garbage, but I feel like it's going to have too much impact on people that already invested in ILV. But maybe you can come up with a solution that is a little less impactful. I don't know.
It would impact everyone, and it would be a very big fundamental shift to a lot of core features of what we are. But I don't know. For me, it feels right. I haven't solved all of the individual issues. Kieran is right. There is a bunch of issues with it, but I feel if those issues were solved, it would be a pretty good idea. But we can't talk about it just yet. It's pretty crazy.
I feel like every time you've said that your idea, like everyone hated your idea, I think you said something before, when everyone hated your idea and then 6 months down the line, they realize how great of an idea it is. So
No, only some of the time. Sometimes everyone hates my idea, and then the idea is just crap, you know. But then there has been a few times where the idea has slowly shown its merits. It's not all the time, but every idea I think belongs into that category of eventually being amazing. But not all of them are, for sure.
yeah. All right. Well, okay, we got another one here. I think it's pretty relevant. Have you guys considered more about, especially, I guess, with markets looking a little bit better, I guess, but I mean, people were generally wondering if we've thought more about when a tier 5 land sale would be happening. Kieran or Aaron?
Yeah, so it's something that would need to be decided by the council. My thoughts on it that we need to do it before the open beta. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Aaron.
We don't necessarily need to. It's all about balance of the land plots. So technically we don't. There's no urgent need for it, but all of the infrastructure that we needed to do it is now done. It was actually done about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, but to set up all of that infrastructure and get it ready to do that one sale is a bit time consuming, and we've got a lot of those people doing other things, you know, such as building the game or building Illuvitas, and you know, so at this stage it's just on the back burner. The idea originally was that we would do the land sale with this as the final part of it, and that makes sense because then you've got everybody focused on that thing. But since we found that bug in the external contract that we were planning on using, it was like, well, we don't want to be unsafe, so let's not do that. And then we put it on the back burner, and now it's just about finding an apt time to bring it in. And mostly the issues around that is just the number of people that would need to start doing things that aren't building the game. So at this stage, I don't think we have a particular date for it, but there's no need to do it before we start, but we obviously really want it.
Isn't that going to affect the balance if we don't have the amount of plots out that we said we would, especially given that they're tier 5?
No. I mean, it's even though tier 5s are really, really cool, we're talking about, you know, 1 tier or 2 tier 5s, I think we said, compared to 20,000 plots. So, I mean, in essence, it does affect the balance, but we're talking about, I don't know, maybe by 2%, something like that, and maybe 3%. The value that people will get out of the tier 5 is not just in being a lot more efficient, but that's what would be out of whack. The other parts of owning a tier 5 would be things like being able to have the stadium and be able to host matches and stuff like that. And tournaments are not planned for the start of open beta because we need to get PvP really, really, I guess, polished to the point where we're certain that there's no bugs. If there's going to be, you know, tokens on the line for winning a tournament, we want to make sure that it isn't because someone got a bit of a glitch in there. I think we're pretty happy with where the arena game mode is at the moment, but we'll need to do a lot of casual tournaments before then to allow people to investigate all of those bugs. And then the proper tournament modes will come out after that. It's at that point that we need to have the lands done. So there's still, I don't know, maybe 3 months post open beta that we could avoid it. I'm not saying, I mean, I'd rather have it done beforehand anyway. I'm just saying, like, technically it's not absolutely necessary.
And from like a market standpoint, where we're at right now, we would probably want to wait. We do want to, these tier fives, because they're so important, we do want to make some headlines when we sell them. And I think while we had a pretty successful land sale at the beginning of this bear market, we're way deeper in it now. So again, it's completely up to the council when we actually sell these, but I would be voting for waiting until we get into a slightly better position, so we can, create some hype and buzz around the sale of those lands.
Yeah, more than understandable. All right, good deal. I'll just remind everyone, since some more people joined since we started, but you guys are welcome to ask questions and ask us anything or raise your hand. We're kind of going through some Illuvium 0 questions at this point. So if you do have questions on this topic right now, you can feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, if you don't want to talk in the chat, you can ask over here and ask us anything. But yeah, I have some questions that I already got from Twitter that I have written down. So we'll kind of go through those as we're waiting if anybody has something to say. So the other one I thought was pretty interesting, and I got the question a few times regarding that people were having a lot more fun, it seemed like, playing, or people were more addicted to playing Illuvium 0 at this point than playing the overworld. This were some people's opinions, do you think, like, overall, if that is the case and most people are enjoying playing Illuvium 0 so much, would you guys consider, transferring resources to developing Illuvium 0 more as opposed to the overworld, I guess, is the general question.
I think that makes sense. There's still a lot of work that needs to go into all three games. And the point of that is that people don't see the final state that the games will be in. So once we get into open beta and people are playing a version of everything that has, the large features, fully fleshed out so they can see the final vision, then we have to work out where to allocate resources. And there are, a few options there. We can reallocate between the individual different games. We can start making new games. We can work on expansions of the existing games. And that will definitely depend on customer sentiments and how things are going. I think we always assumed that Illuvium 0 would be this sort of like quiet, juggernaut that just keeps ticking away, and because it represents such a pillar of all of our games, I think that will be something that people really enjoy. But at the same time, the complexity of it is maybe far lower than some of the other games. That being said, at the moment, the Illuvium Arena game is probably the most complex out of all of them, but the plan for that is to change that to be more of a maintenance crew once we've got all of the features live, and that will probably be the game that is closest to its final state when we launch into the private beta. So the point there is that as we build all of these games, they need different amounts of maintenance, different amounts of expansions and things like that, because Illuvium Arena has always been seen as a game that sits separate to the others. It's the first game where the main point of doing it is to have it as a time sink where it's its own game. It doesn't generate resources, so to speak. It's more about having the enjoyment of playing with the stuff that you have in Illuvium. So that game probably doesn't need as large of a crew once it gets done. The whole point that we did early on of making it data-driven means that to make those extra Illuvials and things like that from that game's perspective is incredibly easy. And most of the work is done on the art side of actually creating the Illuvials, but that art will be utilized through all of the games. So having that larger art team makes sense because they'll be sort of supplying every single game with those new Illuvials in different sets and stuff like that. So probably Illuvium 0 will take up more resources. I would say that Overworld will also take up more resources, and Arena will mostly be a maintenance operation. But I would say that depending on the success of the games, that all of them will go up in resources. It'll just be that Illuvium 0 goes up more than the others.
Yeah, people. I think people got more addicted than they were planning to originally.
They'll get addicted to everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As soon as you have NFTs in the overworld, it's I can't see how people aren't going to get ridiculously addicted to that. And then as soon as you have PvP in the arena, people are going to get addicted to that. So I think it's just a temporary thing. But at the same time, I spoke to Johnny before he went on holidays, and the plan from a resourcing standpoint, as in new recruiting resources, is definitely to put some focus on Illuvium 0. There are a couple of positions that we need to fill. What people probably don't realize is that Illuvium 0 is a very, very small team. So we've needed a couple more resources there anyway, but certainly it's been pretty surprising seeing the crazy amount of gameplay that is happening with Illuvium 0. So we definitely want to capitalize on that, and I think it speaks further to mobile as well. That's been one of the biggest eye-opening things, which we'll touch on Arena eventually once we get closer to open beta.
Cool. It looks like we're having a little bit of a Discord issue, so if some of you can't raise your hands and you're trying to come up and speak, just let me know in that Ask Us Anything chat, and I'll invite you guys up manually. But yeah, for some reason it's not letting some people, it's not a permissions issue, it's something going on with Discord. So if you guys would like to come up and speak, just request in that Ask Me Anything chat and I'll bring you guys up. I think we had Crucial with the question here. That's how we found out. We were checking out the permissions while you guys were talking. But
yeah, I was sliding into Rich's DMs. But I have a general question. I know it's kind of out of the box a bit. Illuvium 0, I know that we have merch designs for the Illuvium game, but is there going to be merch designs based around Illuvium 0 game?
So there isn't specifically plans yet to have Illuvium 0 or Illuvium Arena and Illuvium Overworld specific merch. It's we've got two collections that we're building to start off with. The first one is what we're calling our Essentials collection. So very basic. Again, your blacks, whites, and a couple of color variants, but keeping it very, very simple. Nice, clean logos. And then our second collection, which we're potentially going to launch at the same time, depending on a couple of things that we're waiting on, is going to be around the actual Illuvials. So we picked 6 of the most popular Illuvials. I won't reveal which ones they are yet, but they will be very, very cool designs on inside that new collection, which is the stage 1 Illuvials collection. And then from there, we just want to basically gather feedback. It's obviously a very, very large investment for us to go out and build this out. So we don't want to start with a crazy amount of designs. We just want to get feedback from the first 2 collections, and then we can start building from that. But again, it will be a very open, transparent process where we're polling the community, asking what they would like to see in terms of different designs and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm not ruling it out, but there's nothing as of yet.
Gotcha. And then just lastly, not to get into kind of like scope creep, but just kind of a interesting question I wanted to ask. When it comes to Illuvium Zero and Illuvium the main game, obviously they're intertwined very heavily. Now, the main game future plans were to come out with multiple different sets of Illuvials and possibly even expanding the world that you can discover or other jazz like this, right? Now, if that happens, does Illuvium Zero, what happens on that front? Does it also expand along with the game and like, oh, you can actually move your plot to this area if you want to, that's new and fresh and exciting?
If there are plots that happen to be in new areas, then I think the most obvious answer to that would be that people would have to claim those plots. I don't think that we'll have any sort of a plot movement mechanic, but it's speculation at this stage because we've still got to balance it based on the plots and the regions that we do have. So I'd say that's a question for a year or so down the line.
I'll put it in the books. But appreciate it, guys, and keep up the good work. I gotta head out. Thank you, Rich, for having me up here.
Yep, thanks, Crucial. All right. Yeah, we got. I'll take this other question from Twitter just because it's relevant now to the Illuvium Zero chat we're talking about. But as far as will SILv2 be redeemable once we get into open beta for the speed up tokens, essentially the coins, the in-game currency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the answer to that one is yes. It's a pretty obvious way that people will be able to use those rewards to get some benefit. And SRV2 has always been planned to be used as a token of that type. Like it effectively gives you access to not needing to spend money on certain things. So yeah, that would be one that would be a very good use for it.
Okay. Good deal. So that's pretty much all the ones from Twitter I had for Illuvium Zero. If anybody has any questions regarding Illuvium Zero, I know Alan wanted to come up and ask a question, so I'll bring him up unless anybody else had anything specific about Illuvium Zero. You can let me know now. Let's see here. Where's Alan? Okay, Alan, I just brought you up and you fell off. There you go. You got to unmute yourself, Alan.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
There we go. Thanks. Thank you. So my question is in regards to the 5% of all in-game revenue that goes to landholders. So, for example, is it planned? Well, we already know how it'll work for the overworld, but I'm not clear with how it'll work with Illuvium Zero itself. So I know it is planned for the credits to be sold. I was wondering if the 5% of that revenue will actually go to the landholders, or is that only going to be for the Illuvium token holders? Also, have you guys considered that since it is Illuvium Zero, the credits could be farmed the way they are now and even sold by the landholders to other landholders? And if it is a case that it works, maybe to the other games as well, so that we as landholders can farm all the everything that is possible to sell and be used in other games.
So the way that it will work is that whenever someone purchases something, it's going to increase the price of those fuels. So when they buy credits or they buy anything in any of the games, you'll see it indirectly lift the prices up because that's how the demand curve works. And so then when you sell fuel onto the pool, it'll be at a higher price. So with all of these things, it's not always like a direct someone buys something and then we just split it amongst all of the landholders. It could be that someone who is a landholder just sits there and hoards all of their fuel on their plot, and they store it up and they store it up and they store it up. That person isn't receiving 5% of the revenues, because the only way to trigger that is to actually sell your fuel, right? So they're accumulating fuel which has some sort of worth to the other people in the other games, but they're not actually getting any revenue from their actions, because at that point their action is not to actually sell it. As far as being able to trade credits with other people, I'd go so far as to say that almost certainly wouldn't be possible, because it breaks that idea, because those credits have some sort of a worth to them, and we want them to be internal to the plot. If you were to do that, then it would be a way for landholders to sort of go above that limit of fuel, because they'd be trading it for some sort of worth amongst each other. And it just sort of breaks the overall idea of it. So I would say probably not, but I wouldn't worry about it too much, because there's always going to be a lot of things for landholders to do to be able to improve their plot, to improve their fuel production. And so I think leave it with us, and that one will be fine. And that particular one I know would be 100% solved if my crazy idea was implemented. But again, we won't go into that one.
All right. All right. Well, we got some questions regarding the overworld now. There's quite a few different ones. Kieran, maybe you can comment on this, but some people were wondering, if we have an idea of what base prices of runs are going to be, and curing shards and crafting and all of that sort of stuff, if we have any idea of what base prices of that stuff will be.
We do, but we're not revealing it just yet. But I would say we're 99% sure on the prices that we want to set things at. And what I would say is that they're much more reasonable than what people are speculating on Twitter, because I think that's where a lot of the conversation has been. It's we're trying to make it so that there's a very, very low barrier to entry, because we want mainstream people to come into the game.
Yep.
I'd just like to add on to that one that one of the other questions was about why don't we peg everything to USD instead of ETH? And I don't know. I could be outvoted on this, but to me, the whole point of our system is that we should be basing things off of the underlying crypto system in which we live. So from a philosophical point of view, attaching it to some external pricing of some fiat coin seems a bit ridiculous. But on top of that, the second that you do that, you take away the ability for any sort of price variance, because again, you're always pegging it back to US dollars. So doing that would completely obliterate any of the fun of Illuvium 0 when it comes to arbitrage opportunities and, switching your converters over to Hyperion instead of Solon because you want to take advantage of that Hyperion spike. None of that can exist if everything is always measured exactly in USD, because there is no variance. Then it's always pegged back to some underlying currency. So philosophically, I hate it. And from the perspective of balance, I hate it too. And the point is that if we set reasonable prices for everything, and then it turns out that we get 1 billion people playing the game, and they're all very keen on paying the USD equivalent of, you know, $1 million per travel, well, then that's where the price will trend up towards. And the only thing that will sort of stop it from getting up to that point would be the landholders not releasing their fuel and stockpiling, et cetera, et cetera. And then there'll be, you know, a game amongst them who's going to hold out the longest. If everybody knows that people are willing to pay more, the landholders get to play a part in deciding that fact. And the game players, they get to have their part of it too. They can wait and purchase when the prices are low. And the point of all of that is that you get a nice equilibrium that comes without any person inputting anything. And to me, that's the whole point of having a DAO, is to set up parameters that allow things to run without any input from the outside world and let people just have fun. The second you start pegging things to different currencies, you've got people making decisions and saying, you know, I think that this should be higher. It really should be the community as a whole that is, you know, determining the prices, and it should be by market forces. So I'm very strongly against that. I'm 100% with Kieran that we should go with something that's really, really reasonable to be able to get people in the door. And then what happens after that will just totally depend on the demand of players and the demand from the landholders.
Yeah, I agree. I stopped looking. I probably use ETH prices too much in my head. You know, like even in the real world, I look at stuff in the costs of ETH. I'm like, oh, that'll only cost me, you know, this much in ETH. So that's me personally. So.
I think that's the right way to be. Like, eventually, like if we believe in this system, then people should start to be thinking about things in terms of ETH instead of in terms of whatever their local currency is.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. What do we got? We can. Okay, how about this one? Are there any plans to allow mobile gamers to somehow acquire Illuvials, whether that's through the overworld or in a mini game? Have you thought about that at all?
There's not at the moment, but I know that it came up as an idea from someone in the community. I can't remember who it was.
I think it was Josh Eth.
Right. Okay. Well, so the idea there is to allow people who don't have a computer to be able to go and capture Illuvials, but just keep in mind that a mobile version of Overworld wouldn't include running through the regions, because the graphical intensity, like people can see right now that you have to have a pretty decent computer. We will be optimizing it further, but there's a big difference between a 1050 and even the best phone on the planet next year, right? So there wouldn't be any way to do that. So having a mobile version would in and of itself be something that is a much more stripped down process. The good thing about the way that we've built the overworld is that it really is meant to be like a very graphical pack of cards that you're opening, right? You travel in there, you've paid your fee, and then you go around and you find things and you fight things. There's not meant to be like some ridiculously hard mode for capturing those things. You don't need to do 360 no scopes just to get something. It's not Dark Souls where, if you drop 3 centimeters, you get killed by fall damage. So it really is meant to be that once you go in there, you can collect all of those things. We can strip all of that away and just have a randomizer that people get a certain amount of Illuvials that matches what they would have got if they went in there and did it by themselves. My only hesitation with that is at that point, all it is literally a pack of cards, and it feels like it takes away some of the magic of going into the world. That being said, it does open it up for a lot more players to play, but they wouldn't really be playing. They'd be opening packs of cards, and I don't know. I mean, I could definitely be outvoted on that. It feels a little bit off, but at the same time, I can understand people wanting to be able to get in there and capture them. My thought around that has always been if you if you don't want to play that game, you don't have to. The way that you would do it is through another really, really cool mobile game called the Illuvidex, which is you just go to your mobile and just buy what other people have caught rather than, catching it without really catching it yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would like to play on my phone, but my phone honestly gets hot as it is, just using Discord. So I'm sure it would melt my phone. Okay, I know this one because I saw Artemis write it in. Artemis is here, I believe. Yes, she is. Artemis was wondering if we'll have the unique stats for Illuvials available ahead of open beta. Like if your Illuvials you'll catch will start having randomized stats in the overworld once you catch them.
Yes, that's planned for Overworld Private Beta 2. So that should be available in the next one. If it doesn't quite make that, it'll definitely make open beta because it is a requirement. Technically, the stats themselves don't need to be implemented because the way that we do it, some people know this idea, other people don't, is there's a single really, really complicated value that gets printed onto the Illuvial at the point of capture, which represents all the random stats across every Illuvium game that will ever exist, right? So even games that don't even exist now, they will generate the randomness factor for their individual game. So for example, in like a dating game like Hearts Ablaze, you might have, a little bonus to charisma or something like that. We don't need to plan any of that out now. That one giant hash value will determine all of those stats. So technically the thing that we need to have before the open beta is to have that on the Illuvial. We've already got that. But I think it doesn't feel good to have people buying and selling Illuvials with a random value that they can't pass into, is this good or is this bad? So it's definitely a priority and it'll be there before open beta.
Yeah, I thought when I first started playing the beta, I was like, people were sharing already, their random stats, and it was like,
yeah, but then they quickly realized that they were literally random and changed all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. The reason behind that was because the version of Overworld that people are playing is not backend connected everywhere. And that's just purely because there's a lot of backend pieces that have to be connected. And we just didn't get it in time, but it wasn't part of what we were trying to balance. Whereas for the next private beta, that will be part of the balance. So we're attempting to have all of the backend pieces connected there. There's, when I say all, maybe that's a little bit too optimistic, but all of the ones that a player would care about inside of the game.
Yeah. All right. This is a big one. I think people very much so are looking forward to this, not only in the overworld, but I think it applies to arena as well. And they're wondering, what kind of social interaction plans we have, like chats or voice chats, localized voice chats, what kind of plans we have there.
Okay, so interestingly enough, in the overworld, you'll actually get social interactions that are dynamic in the regions before you'll get it in Sanctum Mesa, which is kind of the opposite way of how people normally do it. Normally, you have sort of like a town hall area where people can, go and see each other and do their stuff, and that is Sanctum Mesa. And then you have these instanced, dungeons or whatever they happen to be, where you sort of are by yourself. We have a different way of going about doing it because the tech that we need to have you interact with people in the instanced regions is actually a little bit easier to do than what we have planned for Sanctum Mesa. So we're going to do that part before we do the part where you can see a bunch of people standing around in a town hall and, jump and talk to them and, do all sorts of memey things. So you'll get to interact with people in a very, I don't know, I find it pretty cool. There's a cool way that you'll be able to interact with others in the overworld. And we can't really go into it at the moment because it'll spoil some of the surprise around some of the, the lore and mechanics. But I think it'll be interesting. It's certainly not, wow, a whole new Second Life, but it is pretty cool. Then there will be text-based chat. That'll be something that will be enabled very early on. It may not hit the open beta, but it'll be there soon after. And that will involve things like you'll have a friends list, you'll have a guild, and you'll be able to see those different channels and talk to those different people. So you'll be able to talk to a lot of your friends because, again, this needs to be a place where you feel at home. The reason why we're not too worried about it being exactly in the open beta is because we do want people to have a little bit of a feeling of isolation at the start, because that is the way that a ranger would feel after the predicament that they're in. So it may take a little bit of time, but there is a lot of plans for social interaction. And then in things like Illuvium Arena, when you're in Illuvium Arena, you're controlling your companion drone. You're actually not controlling your ranger anymore. So the interactions that you have there will be between you as the companion drone and the other person's companion drone. So if you're playing PvP, your drone will be able to sort of walk around the board and go up to the other drone. You'll be able to chat to them. They'll be able to mute you in case you're being too much of a troll. And the main communication will be through two types of sort of artistic things. The first one is emotes, and the second one is, I guess, what we're calling animated emotes. So things like, Mozart dabbing or any sort of animation will be there. Plus, you'll be able to flash up these emotes, which we've shown people a lot of them so far. And that is your way to sort of, I guess, style on your opponent, or just to say hi or communicate. And we feel like those will be really fun. They will be an NFT that you'll have to purchase or win as some sort of reward for some achievements. And then you'll be able to select which ones you want to bring into the battle so that you can, pick the ones you want to flash up, whether it be, like a cute little caca emote in a bucket of dodo, Kentucky Fried Dodo, or whatever it happens to be, or whether it's deal with it dash, or I think we have something like, I don't know, maybe 400.
I prefer
emotes.
Popeye's Dodo. Like Kentucky Fried isn't that good anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, there'll be a lot of ways to express yourself there, and in the long term, there'll always be those chat channels that you'll have that you'll be able to type in text. So even while you're playing a game, you'll be able to talk to your guild and you'll be able to talk to your friends. That will be ubiquitous throughout all of the games. And then there's per game, there'll just be some cool interactions. In a game where you're playing, say, like a kart racing game, obviously the interaction will be you see other people on the track, but every game will have its own unique way of allowing you to interact with other people, and the overworld is an arena at the start of that. We don't have anything planned with Illuvium 0 that's like super highly developed, but let's just say that you might be able to clash with people on other plots, and that might be a bit clandestine.
Ooh, is that a leak? Aaron leaking stuff?
No. Everything needs to be approved by IIP, so nothing is a leak until everyone makes it a leak.
Okay. Well, sounds cool either way. I mean, but yeah, that's like a perfect segue, I guess, into, you already gave some information about PvP, but that's a big question that a lot of people have been asking is, where we're at, like how difficult has it been to develop PvP, and how it's going essentially.
PvP is going well. As I've said before, we do need to do some testing of different game modes, or not different game modes, but different ways in which the Ascendant mode could operate. At the moment, we're trying to strip it back and be as simple as possible and see how fun we can make it. That being said, for Private Beta 3 for Arena, when people play that, it'll definitely be a very stripped down version of it, very similar to how Survival Mode was a very stripped down version. And the purpose of that is we don't want to go in and build like crazy elaborate things and then have people say, no, we don't need it to be elaborate. In the end, what we want it to be is tactical and fun. The underlying sort of systems that we've got are always going to be tactical and fun, because unlike other games where most of your effort is spent on trying to pick, these meta picks and stuff like that, for us, it's all about how you counteract your opponent. And there's a number of different ways that you do that through either the affinity, the class, the positioning, or a deeper understanding of the underlying Illuvials and how they combat each other on a one-to-one level. So I feel like it's not going to be possible to make it bad, but to make it good, we just want to make sure that it's something that's fairly simple for people to understand while still having a lot of depth. A game like chess, you don't really need to learn all that many things, and then there's just a lot of strategy that comes out of that. We're looking to keep it the same.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I want to play Daniel internally so I can, Perry thought he was going to beat me one time and he didn't, so I'm pretty confident. Other than Jim Barino beat me, but, that was a fluke.
I have a sneaking suspicion that Perry might be one of the best Ascendant mode players of all time, because he has access to the AI that's programming all of the balance and making the bots that will be better than any human player. So
you heard it here first. I beat the best player in the world.
He's not going to cheat, but he has access to all of the data. So, that's going to have to absorb into his brain, in some way.
Yeah. And I'll be looking forward to chatting, because I'm sure I'll get blocked a lot by people. So that'll be fun.
Yep.
Let's see. What do we got here? We got that was most of the PvP that you covered. Let's get Kieran to answer. I mean, this can be, I kind of want to keep it on time. I know you guys are busy. We got 10 minutes or so, but so somebody asked if you guys could do one thing differently for Illuvium over the past year and a half. What would it have been and why? Kieran?
For me, there's probably two things, but the biggest would have been the delaying of that capital raise. Had we not built Forge and we just did the capital raise when we said we would, then we probably would have raised somewhere to the tune of $100 million plus. Which obviously, when you have a 15, 20-year vision, that would make things, let's just say, a lot more smoother. And but at the same time, there's always pros and cons of everything. And I think this process of us not having just a stupidly large amount of runway has made us optimize our team quite well over last year. And so we're now in a position where if we were to go into a capital raise, we could grow, and we've got really good, I would say, really good bases in each department to grow in. And so that's kind of the silver lining of that. Again, obviously, having $100 million in our vault would in our treasury would be really, really good. And I think the other thing would be putting more focus on mobile. I think what we've seen in the last 2 years, especially with some of the more casual games out there that you can play now, is that these players inside of developing nations they're in abundance. There's a huge amount of them. There's millions of them, in fact, and they don't have access to high-powered PCs. And so, while Zero can do that and they can access that, it is limited by the number of players. And we've got some, as Aaron said, we've got some crazy ideas of how to expand that. But certainly Arena, if we had have put a little bit more focus on that and maybe got some mobile specific Unreal devs earlier on, then we would have been in a position where we could launch that potentially with open beta, which I think would have had a pretty big impact. Again, having said that, it is already being planned out. The first POC will be here in the next sort of 2 or 3 months, so it's not going to be too much of a delay, but they would be the two big things for me.
Anything for you, Aaron? What would you have changed?
You don't want to hear all of the things that I would change about the mistakes that I've made. We've got 5 minutes left, and it'll take about 3 hours to go through all of my mistakes. I would say just being a lot better with our internal processes, and I should have been on top of that a lot more. That probably feeds into everything. There's a whole bunch of decisions that I've made that have turned out to be really crappy. So yeah, let's leave it at that.
All right, and then we'll like you said, we have about 5 minutes. We'll try and keep it on time a little bit. But Kieran, just to ask you some more of these like more fun ones. Some people were asking about what the state of planning a Illuvifest is.
So it's a tough one. It's something that we're constantly talking to the different speakers that would come to that event. So we're building that audience there, and we're getting as many partners as we can to get excited about this. Same thing with the music artists that we're potentially going to bring along to this. But there's, again, a very, very large cost associated with running an event like that. And while I think we can turn it into a profitable event, there's a lot of upfront costs. And with us going into open beta now and only having 12 months of runway, it's starting to look like it will be more a 2024 thing, late in 2024. But remembering as well that we also want to run a very large esports tournament inside of that festival, which means we need to have the arena version polished to a point where we've run a bunch of the smaller casual type tournaments, and then we get to a point where we can actually put on a large prize pool. That's going to take 6 months, maybe even longer as well, for us to iron out all of those issues. So it's likely going to be 2024 at this stage. But again, anything can happen if we open up the beta and things start going crazy, and all of a sudden we can put a couple of million towards building an event, and it's a little bit of a risk, but the council decides, what, we've got the runway to do it, then maybe that changes things and we do see it this year.
I will say we have at least 2 boxing matches lined up with community members that are willing to.
I mean, look, I don't know. Again, the council can vote whatever they want, but I don't know if we necessarily need to have boxing matches. I know Chris is sort of championing that. But,
Chris really wants to box Jimbo, and Taryn really wants to box Kagi, so,
Fair enough. You got to give the people what they want. If maybe that can be a thing. I don't know.
Don't fight Grant. He's getting pretty jacked at the moment. He'll probably knock someone's head off.
Good deal. Looking forward to it. Okay, well, we're about at time. Kieran, we'll ask just one more question for you, I guess. People want to know when you're doing another TFT game or or trivia in general.
Never. I've realized I started looking into a bunch of other communities and their giveaways, and even our own giveaways, where you give like $14 and you get 200 people who show up. And I've looked at my 10,000 plus giveaways that I do randomly, and I'm like, Jesus, I need to reel that in. No, but in all seriousness, it's just a fun way for me to engage the community at times when people are waiting, and I know it's been a long time, and everyone's really, really keen to get to open beta. But while we're delivering things like Illuvium 0 and Overworld and stuff like that, we don't really need to fill the gaps, which is why, and it makes us extremely busy, as you know. So that's why there hasn't been one in a while. But you never know. These things, they pop up out of nowhere, and that's kind of the fun about it. But
Yeah, you can't tell them when. It's got to be the people who are here and committed. So
100%, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. So, and plus, they get to hang out with me every week in trivia and Cucka's Cave. So they
win that $15.
They win all kinds of good stuff. They win hats, merch, ILV.
Actually, I heard Chris is starting to complain about all of the merchandise that he needs to send out. So, that's
it's more difficult on me giving it out. Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Let's see here. What do we got? Well, we got Aaron said he's got a little bit more time. We can answer a few more questions. How about regarding Illuvatars, Aaron? Can you give us an update on Illuvatars? How's that looking?
It's looking really, really good. I think a lot of people are sort of sleeping on just how cool that will be. And even though it's a collectible game, it's still definitely something that you can play on mobile. So that is available for everyone to do. I don't think I've ever met anyone that didn't find it fun opening packs of cards and, finding cool things inside them. It's like the best version of any type of card opening game that you could possibly think of. I really do like it. The other thing that is probably not realized yet is that whereas the other three games are going to sort of expand in different ways and get better and stuff like that, the Illuvatars project, we already have plans for something to attach onto that, which would be like a proper straight up card game. So something similar to Hearthstone or something like that. We still would need to get that approved by the community, and we don't have any game design plans or anything like that. But we feel that could be a really fun casual card game that people could play. It will connect Illuvatars to the rest of all of the ecosystems. And yeah, I mean that's been the major focus for me for the last few months, is designing and building out what Illuvatars is, what it's going to be in the future. And that's maybe not as big of a sleeper as Illuvium 0, but it's right up there in terms of getting people addicted to collecting cool things. And there's a blog article that will go out. It was actually written about a month and a half ago, but it'll go out, I believe, either this week or the next, where I'll try to explain a bit of our vision for what Illuvatars will be going forward and how it has evolved over time. Remember, it started off as an idea of just being, similar to other projects where it was like a randomized profile picture. And I guess in those projects, it sort of ends up being like a key to unlocking some other, group or something like that. This is not what ours is planned to be. If people allow us to do it, it will be a way to unlock this card game to the community. And there's a billion people out there that love playing card games. You can always do them on mobile. They're really, really easy to build for both because the movement mechanics are very, very similar. It's you click and drag with your mouse, or you tap and drag with your finger. So making that will be really easy, and that would become very similar to Illuvium Arena in that it would be another game for people to take their deck into and play that. But some of the features will go out in that blog article, but the art quality is crazy. It's addictive as hell. Putting them into the sleeves and getting the milestones are just insane, right? You flip through all of your collections and you try to optimize it, and you're like, okay, well, I really need to get the top hat, but I also need to get something that is water, and I also need to get something that is a bulwark character, and I really want to get that scar. So you end up getting, rambunctious Atlas, or maybe it doesn't exist on the marketplace, so you just buy the individual components, bond them together, place it down, and then bam, you might have 5 or 6 milestones, 2 or 3 more collections completed. You get bonus points for doing all of that. Now you're up on the top 100 leaderboard. It's just, yeah, it's pretty addictive.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kieran's got to go, but Aaron said he would hang out for a couple more questions. If you want to say bye, Kieran.
Yeah, I got to run. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Thanks, Kieran.
Cheers.
But what I was gonna say was, for me, when you messaged me about the whole card game idea, like for me, I was a big proponent of just the collectibles of Illuvatars, like waiting to have that collectible area ready, because that to me seemed like such a major like selling point on why it was different. Like I've bought plenty of like totally shit PFPs just because they were PFPs for absolutely no reason with no utility. Like this was like an actual utility that I could see in my head. Like I was like, this makes sense. Like I can put them in a binder just like some other collectible card, like Pokemon or whatever it may be, Magic the Gathering, which I did when I was a kid. So like this to me just made sense. It's like, yeah, I can actually collect these Illuvatars and fill them in. So that's why I was like a huge proponent of that. So
yeah,
from the beginning, it wasn't even just a PFP to me,
Yeah, there's also things like album skins that won't be live at launch, but later on will allow people to customize the look of their album. So not just the individual collections or the sleeves that are inside that, but you'll be able to make your album look different from the standard sort of Illuvium purple album. And a lot of people, I think, will get involved in that. And if you want to do that, if you want to get that skin, you'll have to buy it with fuel. And when you pay fuel for it, then the price is going to go up, and then that's going to allow the landholders to take their rewards, and everything sort of feeds back into itself. And yeah, it'll be really cool. The one I guess the one leak that I could give about Illuvatars is that the thinking of what an Illuvatar has moved away from the idea of it just being like a profile picture where it was at the beginning. And what I will say is that the Illuvatars are avatars for your Illuvials.
Leak.
So that would be pretty cool.
Yes. I'm looking forward to
people can speculate on exactly what that means. It'll come out in the blog article that'll come out this week or next, but it really links the project in with the rest of all of the projects, because we've made a commitment that for everything we do, Illuvials should be the first class citizen. You should be able to build decks for everything. Doesn't matter whether you're playing a kart racing game, you've got to be able to take Illuvials into that. Maybe we make an action RPG where your ranger goes around and kills a bunch of monsters. In that, you still have to be able to take your Illuvials along, and Illuvatars will be no different. It won't be there at launch, but Illuvials will become a part of that as well.
Cool. Looking forward to Illuvatars, definitely. I know people are starting to collect SILV2 already in plans of it. The ones that are staking, at least. They're definitely starting to collect.
There's so many cool features. We have a launch party planned where you'll be able to see what other people are minting in real time. You'll be able to see the most powerful Illuvatar that has been minted so far. You'll be able to see the most powerful that people have bonded together. You'll see a stream of links. There'll be a music player that will have music going that you can listen to. The only thing that we won't have is like a chat feature, but the point behind that is that the dev work into doing some of these things is a little bit high compared to other parts of the project. And all I would suggest is have Discord open while that is live, and you'll be able to see. I mean, there's all sorts of cool things in there that people don't see. The documentation for Illuvatars has grown. It's significantly larger than Illuvium 0. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was reading through it over the weekend. It's a lot of pages. Aaron loves writing.
Well, I love making it easy for the devs to work is probably the better way of putting it. We need people to be able to understand exactly what it is they're building. So, I mean, the land sale was built on the back of that IIP, and it was only through sheer force of Johnny's will that we managed to get all of that done and as good as it was. But we only have one Johnny, so in other places we have to ensure that the devs have very clear guidelines for exactly what they're building, and that's my job, is to give them those clear guidelines.
Yeah, no, that documentation saves my life 90% of the time. I don't have to ask you a question because it's all under documentation in there. So yeah, you do amazing work there, definitely. But yeah, with that, we're about 10 minutes over. I think we can wrap it up.
Yep.
So I appreciate you coming on, Aaron. I apologize to the community. I think Discord had some small issues with people being able to raise their hands. So we took some questions. I had a lot of questions from Twitter that we went ahead and got answered. But as for the raising hands, it was some sort of Discord limitation today. But yeah, we'll have another one of these soon. And I appreciate all the questions from Twitter and the few people we did have come up. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's always fun to come and do these things, and yeah, invite me again, and I'm sure we'll be able to go through some new stuff, maybe add a few leaks here and there. Be pretty cool.
Yep. And this is recorded, and we'll get it up on the Illuvium Plus YouTube after at some point pretty quick. So appreciate everyone being here. Thank you.
Thanks again, guys. Bye.
Bye.